Thank you for the many ways that you contribute to Jefferson Unitarian Church, whether it is through this basket, giving online, or giving your time to make this community a lively and vibrant place. A special thanks this week to those who helped make the musical happen last weekend. They were really able to bring Unitarian Universalist history and characters to life. It was beautiful. Another thank you to the many volunteers who worked with Family Promise and hosting folks within our walls this past week, especially over the holiday. I have a thank you to those who spent Thanksgiving dinner right here at our potluck here. It is great to have a place to go. And one other thank you to Sophia's Journey for lending us your voices and your wisdom in what we all needed to hear this time. For the many ways you contribute to Jefferson Unitarian Church, we give thanks.
Good morning. Julie Excel and I are honored and very pleased to be asked to share some of our original poetry with you this morning. And before I start, I want to just make sure you understand one of the words in my poem. It's masticate. It means to chew. Okay? It's a Thanksgiving poem, okay? It's called Tradition Breaker. Please pass the gravy, says daughter-in-law, a snarl lurking beneath her oh-so-sweet request. Eyes averted, mother obliges, as their traditional nice but not battle begins our Thanksgiving meal. Well, weather wears out as a safe topic, as do compliments to the cook. Mastication punctuates the uneasy silence. Our first grandson perches in his high chair at the far end of the table. Subdued by the mood, he gobbles bits of turkey and chases errant peas around his tray. Accustomed to attention, adoration actually, he studies the masticators while pinching his final pea into green mash. Suddenly, first grandson's empty cup sails across the table, clanks, and rattle stops next to the cranberry sauce. Stunned, they all look at the child, who is laughing merrily. Mother joins in, and then the aunts, and even daughter-in-law. The hilarity makes first grandson squeal with delight as he bangs his dimpled hands on the tray. At last, they all have something to talk about.
Autumn Song. The plum tree strews the path with her bright, brave fruit. Like the Mexican woman at the street fair, her weavings radiating 1,000 miles of sun. The hard globes pop beneath my boot as I hurry nowhere, somewhere, pursued by whirling leaves, the last reckless roses, a rattling battalion of seeds, a flurry of bright notes falling through the air. The time has come, they shout, to bear your crimson heart, to fling out your gold, to spread the harvest of your soul across the bright blanket in the last rays of precious, piercing light.
Around the last few presidential elections, there has been a threat that I've heard repeatedly. If that other candidate wins, I'm moving to Canada. How many of you have heard that from other people? How many of you have said it yourself? Right? Yeah, I know that instinct because I have felt it too. I felt it after George W. Bush was reelected. I felt like I didn't know my country and I wanted out. But like most Americans, and I assume most of you, my threats were idle. I heard the same chorus of threats again when President Obama was elected. And this time, the threats didn't make as much sense to my ears because those folks said they were trying to avoid health care reform and marriage equality, which Canada already had. But with the most recent election, I've heard it all again. And for some people, they have really good reason to move. Folks are afraid for their lives and their well-being. And if that is you, go in peace. But for many of us, that's not the case. And for those of us who have some privilege, we must commit to staying. We must commit to resisting. And we must commit to supporting one another along the way. We must build systems that are not just reactive, but help sustain us so that we can be in this for the long haul. Unitarian Universalist minister Robin Tanner recently wrote a reflection about what it means to stay and commit to this resisting. Tanner writes, "I'm not moving to Canada. I'm not building a blanket fort. I'm not blaming disenfranchised voters for this election. I'm not mandating the proper peaceful response. Instead, for maybe the second time in my life, I am truly holding on. Hold on, it's my mantra for my white girl self. I'm keeping my eyes on the prize of a land where we, the people, is more than a broken promise of once and long ago. I'm going to show up, I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to show up again. I'll hold on with a small safety pin attached to my lapel. Hold on to listen for the story, the pain, and the promise beneath the labels. Hold on into the night, hold on into the streets, and hold on into Sunday morning services. I'm loving the hell out of this country and hoping it is enough to hold on." We too are called to hold on, to stick with it and with one another, to build networks of resistance and resilience. Resistance can take many forms. In the poem that Linda shared, there was a toddler bucking the status quo and breaking the silence. In Julie's poem, there was resistance and resilience in living fully into your brave and bold potential. Resistance is holding on to your moral center, our collective moral center, and not adjusting to a new, more oppressive normal. There is a 70-year-old German woman named Ermela Mensa-Schramm who exemplifies this resistance. For the last 30 years, she has been scraping down or covering up Nazi-related stickers and graffiti all over Germany. She travels around with a tote bag that she decorated to say, "Against Nazis." And in that bag, she carries a scraper, nail polish remover, and spray paint. She is armed and ready for this battle of resistance that she has kept up over these 30 years. She has removed 72,000 stickers and graffiti that she has carefully photographed and cataloged in binders. She finds them on train stations and lampposts and in playgrounds, but continues her ministry. And this work is not without risk. Mensa Shram has been assaulted a handful of times and has gotten in trouble with the law for graffiti and property damage. But she continues because her moral compass remains focused. Getting rid of these symbols is worth the risks. These Nazi-era stickers can be a signal of the violence that is to come. They invoke fear and promote hatred. She seeks to send a message that this hate will not go unchallenged, and she hopes to prevent more hurt toward vulnerable groups. Soon after she started clearing the stickers and graffiti in her neighborhood, the stickers lessened and then stopped. Someone got the message, at least in her small sphere. When you resist by interrupting oppression firmly and consistently, you can make a difference. And while Mensa Shram seeks to prevent hurt toward the vulnerable, others closer to home are intentionally spreading some love. There's a nationwide action taking root called Neighborhood Love Notes. And our youth group participated in it 2 weeks ago, and some of you may have seen the chalk art that was left out on the sidewalk. These were notes of power and love and inspiration. This movement was started nearly inadvertently by Unitarian Universalist minister and activist Ashley Horan. Just after the recent election, her loved ones and mentors from more marginalized communities were expressing feeling alone, betrayed, fearful, and hated. And these leaders in local justice movements, whom she had companioned and looked to and respected, were now in need of support. So she wrote them love notes in chalk. Horan knows that love alone is not enough, but it sure can help. The way she talks about it is like this: I wanted to contribute even a drop into the well of resistance to the folks from frontline communities whose lives are undeniably more at risk now than they have been in living memory. We will need to survive. We will need them to survive and lead us forward in resistance and repair of our broken world. These notes of love are one more drop in the bucket of resilience for these leaders. One more drop. After posting her love notes on social media, so many others wanted to do the same. And this campaign was born, where hundreds of Unitarian Universalist congregations participated, and over 1,500 people were following along online, and who knows how many other people were rogue, chalking love notes around the country. That same day, a couple weeks ago, I was feeling sad and angry and pretty helpless, not sure I knew what to do. And so I met up with a friend to spread some love to our multicultural neighborhood in Boulder. Yes, multicultural neighborhoods do exist in Boulder. It felt important to me to make sure that there were messages of positivity to counter the messages of hate. I'm not sure how much of a difference it made to anybody else, but it felt good for me to do something in that moment, and hopefully I added one more drop into the bucket of resilience. Some of Haran's original love notes stated, "Black lives will always matter. In diversity, there is beauty and strength. Let us not throw up our arms when it is time to roll up our sleeves." This last one speaks to Reverend Haran's larger message. These love notes are a good first start, but we must not stop there. She invites us to think about what else we might do to resist, what else we might do to create more systemic change. Here are some possible ways. Getting involved in local politics. Attending a protest or a march led by people most directly affected. Making a significant donation to grassroots efforts who don't always have access to larger donors. Engaging your family or friends, either in real life or on social media, who are sharing or saying offensive and oppressive things. Instead of unfriending them or ignoring those statements, what could it mean to engage? And lastly, developing spiritual practices and community relationships to make it possible for all of us to withstand the discomfort and the anxiety that will inevitably come. We need these spiritual practices and these communities to help fill us up when the world breaks our hearts and everything spills out. This is the work that we are doing together as Jefferson Unitarian Church, as Unitarian Universalism, as a movement. We are building these community relationships that will help sustain us for the long haul. What will help you to engage? What will help you to keep going?
Unfold. Rest your hand on your heart, like the sun rests on the hills, like the heron on its nest, like the moon on its ladder of clouds. Close your eyes and recall, you were born from the same burst of hope that began it all. Swirling together, exploding out, you, unique, yet on the same path as the cosmos, the cactus, the starfish, the earth. Feel the tide of breath rise and fall. Feel the pulsar of your heart, every beat crying, unfold, unfold, unfold. Rest your hand on your heart that never stops seeking, no matter how we forget, how we deny. Close your eyes and promise again.
North Table Mesa. Wind-furrowed spring snow weighs heavily upon the mesa. Intermittent sunlight feebles through wrung-dry clouds as they move on. Beneath the snow. Pink pink prairie flowers lie flattened, waiting. Tiny icicles drip from chamisa buds, still green despite their frosted caps. So quiet, so still. Near the pond to be, a meadowlark perches atop a dry mullein stalk. Suddenly, he sings, hesitant but hopeful.
On September 11th, 2001, I was a senior in high school. And I grew up in a suburb 13 miles from the World Trade Center. I lived on a steep hill that in New Jersey we called a mountain. And from right in front of my house, there was a perfect view of the Twin Towers. And that morning when I was at school, the principal pulled me out of class and told me that my mother was safe. Now, at that point, it was a little puzzling because I didn't know why she wouldn't be. And so he told me that a plane had hit one of the World Trade Center towers, which was just down the block from where my mother worked. So I re-entered class, a little puzzled and silenced, trying to make sense of it all. And in the next period, the buzz started to build, and so we decided to turn on the radio. And that's when we heard that another plane had hit the other tower. At that point, we knew that this was not a normal accident. By the class after that, I realized that no more schoolwork was going to be done that day. And so I picked up my brother and we went home to watch the place where the towers had been burn and cry with one another, waiting for our mom to get home. She was delayed by a few hours because of the massive evacuation out of New York and the long decontamination process. And that day, through email, I found out that Unitarian Universalist kids that I knew from a camp had died in one of the planes. The world as I knew it was coming crashing down along with those towers. War was likely, and I didn't know what else was even possible. That night, we went as a family to an emergency worship service at our local Unitarian Universalist church. And during that service, we sang the hymn, "Gentle, Angry People." Gentle, angry people singing for our lives. That hymn spoke to our theology of gentle, loving, diverse, justice-seeking people working through it all together. It became my anthem of resilience and resistance in a time when there were so many questions and so much fear. I sang it as I cried at home. I sang it at the protest in Washington, D.C. called "Stop the War in Iraq Before It Starts." I sang it on my way to meet members of the Islamic Center for Coalition Building, and I sang it in my car alone. This hymn helped me through this really challenging and uncertain time. As many of us gathered here on the day after the most recent election, the song Gentle Angry People re-emerged for me. Though the trauma was different, some of the visceral feelings were the same. The fear, uncertainty, anger, sadness, hopelessness. And so I tapped back in to that hymn and started humming it and then singing it. However, I have come to understand more fully that sometimes being gentle in our resistance is not enough. And insisting that marginalized folks especially respond with gentleness can be a tool of oppression. And with that in mind, I edited Holly Near's beautiful lyrics to invite us to be a bold and loving people instead of gentle, loving people singing for our lives. We are a bold and loving people. In this time of uncertainty, we are called to move outside of our typical zones of comfort. We are called to take risks for justice, large and small. We are called to be loving through it all. The poems that Linda and Julie shared, as well as the song sung so beautifully by Sophia's Journey, point to something that's been giving me a sense of hope. Part of my spiritual practice is being in nature and knowing that it persists. The sun keeps coming up, and the mountains still stand. The galaxies still swirl. No matter what any of us do, that will remain true. And it gives me hope to know that there is a force larger than me and larger than all of us. In order to get through the challenging times right now and in the future, we must take care of ourselves, our beloveds, and those who are vulnerable, because all of our lives and our freedoms are at stake. In order to practice this resilience so that we can keep going for the long haul, it's important to tap into three things. The first is having a sense of a larger purpose, a larger mission that is calling us forward. The second is a spiritual practice to help refill our well. This might be connecting to nature, or meditating, journaling, however you connect more deeply to yourself and a mystery beyond us all. And the third is being connected to a supportive community that helps us to withstand the comfort, the discomfort, and the anxiety, to help hold us accountable and hold us when our light goes out. Because we can light our flame once again from our collective chalice. Together, we can do this. We are a bold and loving people, singing, loving, praying for our lives and those that we care about. Together, we can do this one day, 1 month, 1 year, 1 presidential term, 1 life at a time.